Greetings. This is General CJG here, and we are back to deal with the Darth Bane trilogy. Going now with part 2, which is Rule of 2. So, and with me I got here.
This is a Spider-Fan Maniac. To end where we started with Jedi vs. Sith.
And?
Captain Henson ready to finally put a bullet in Old Yeller.
Indeed. So, yeah, and so now we officially deal with Rule of 2. So, but first, let's give a very quick summary on how it was our first time reading this book. So, who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first. So, I got this book around the same time as I did the other two in the trilogy. Got the hardcover for all three. I read it soon after Path of Destruction, just to read through the whole trilogy. And if I remember correctly, before reading it, I did read Bane of the Sith, because that's really important for things we'll discuss later. And overall, I enjoyed it, thought it was well written, didn't have the... it did have problems, not to the extent of Path of Destruction, but it does have its own unique little identity we'll discuss later.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, that one.
Yeah, so I read this immediately after I finished Path of Destruction. Now, this thing, like Henson said, doesn't have problems like Path of Destructions, like its continuity ruining stuff, but it has its own set of new problems that needs to be dissected one by one. So there's that.
Okay, I guess that leaves to me. So this book, I read it almost shortly after reading Path of Destruction, and since I had no experience with Jedi vs. Sith or Bane of the Sith, I pretty much enjoyed what I read. It was a pretty solid read, all things considered. But rereading it now for the podcast, and yeah, I say first half is where I think has more problems, whereas the second half is the less problematic. So that's what I think so far, and yeah, that's I guess my first exposure with the book and what I think of it now. So without further ado, we shall get into what happened in this book. So let's start with the first half, which deals with pretty much the Battle of Rusan, or what's left of it, or what happened in there.
We basically finish up the Jedi vs. Sith adaptation portion of this trilogy. If for those who remember the epilogue of the previous novel, Carpenter tried to cram as much into that epilogue as humanly possible to explain what else happened in Jedi vs. Sith, even though you need to read the fucking comic to understand what the fuck was happening with some of these characters. Speaking of which...
Oh boy. So, yeah. So what happens is, basically we're kind of seeing what happened in the last issue of Jedi vs. Sith. Basically, Bane, Sana, they see the remnants of the thought bomb, they find Derabit, explode his hand, they pretty much get away there, and so that is what happens. But also, not only is it a adaptation of the last issue of Jedi vs. Sith, but it also is a adaptation of a certain short story from Star Wars Gamer number 3. Which one is it, Owen?
Bane of the Sith.
Yep. So...
And was that not Bane's first... Yeah, his first appearance. Because his first reference was the Phantom Menace novelization, but that was his first, appearance, right?
I say so, yeah. It would be the first time that we pretty much actually reading a story about him, instead of him just being just a simple, quick reference, and that was it.
I mean, the essential chronology, which I think was released in the year 2000, right? The first one, not the new one.
The first one. Yeah, it was 2000, if I recall.
So that thing explains that Bane was the survivor of Battle of Rusan, and he somehow didn't get killed by the thought bomb. That was their way of trying to combine the references in Dark Forces novels and was mentioned in the Phantom Menace novelization.
Mm-hmm.
But Bane of the Sith is basically what happened after he survived. So it is still his first legitimate appearance.
Yeah. So now since Bane of the Sith is definitely a less well-known story, at least outside of the EU circle, this one definitely might need a bit more detail on how of how it goes in regards to how the story was told. So basically, Bane is flying the ship that he stole from Cordes. He goes to the moon of Duxon, which is of course the resting place of Frida Nad, because Darth Bane is going for Frida Nad's holocron. So he's on his way to land, but apparently he gets visions from Cordes and Khan, more Cordes. So yeah, and Bane gets pissed and accidentally releases some strong force power, which disables the ship. He lands in there, and he survives the crash. Then he goes on his path to the tomb. He's attacked by some predators, some wild predators. He pretty much kills them. Manages to get to the tomb, and in there he finds the room that has the holocron, and also he sees that in the ceiling there's some weird crustacean things, and one of them goes for Bane. Bane pretty much slashes it, but the saber only pushed the parasite, didn't actually cut it in half. So yeah, then others try to get into Bane, and he pretty much fends them off, and he managed to grab the holocron, but two of the parasites managed to latch into him, and their teeth pretty much burrow inside his skin, which hurts like hell, by the way, and they pretty much are like kind of attached to his body inside in a parasitic / symbiotic sense, and he pretty much keeps that shit for at least for the end of Rule of Two. So I'll just say that. And he sees the Freonat holocron and learns that not only are those parasites called orbalisks, and which removing them is kind of impossible. So, but he can use some armor to pretty much make sure the parasites don't multiply inside him and completely overtake his entire body, keeping his head and arms pretty much unscathed. So yeah, and then he gets the holocron and leaves the place. So yeah, and then finally he goes to Onderon to find Sana being attacked by a few clan people, the Beast Riders, and Bane saves Sana, and pretty much just and yeah, from there the 10 years part of this book ends. The first half. So yeah, that's how that ended. There is another thing to mention, that Sana managed to find transport from Rusan to Onderon by pretty much killing a search group that was searching for survivors in Rusan. She killed them with a blaster. And why didn't she go with Bane? Because Bane didn't want it. So yeah, Bane wanted to go alone. Sana had to go to Onderon. So yeah, that happened.
Yeah, there is a lot to discuss, and thing you forgot to mention about the Rusan Reformation, and it started.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. So in the first part, yeah, we also get the Rusan Reformation happening. We see Farfalla and Johun. They're pretty much with Chancellor Balorum, not Episode 1 Balorum, ancestor. So yeah, and they pretty much do the Rusan Reformation, and Farfalla promotes Johun from Padawan to Jedi Knight, and yeah, that happened. So yeah. That's what happens in the first half. So, what do you guys got to say?
Now, the annoying thing about this book is, yes, finally Darabit does appear, but it doesn't explain certain things that needed to explain. Did Darabit and Duke Corporation's version interact with Githany? Did Darabit kill Charney? Did any of those things actually happen? Yeah, this is something that needs to be answered, because how Darabit even joined the Sith is not even explained at all, isn't it, right?
Yeah, because without his run-in with Githany, that throws a fucking sledgehammer into the wheels here. Like, what is the story here? Like, who did he join?
Because you have to remember the whole reason why Buck, stupid name, Hardin died is because while Darabit and Zana were trying to escape the cave while Khan was performing the ritual, Buck died because, the cave collapsed on his head or something, right? Due to the thought bomb.
Well, I mean, his power was already being drained, so he was dead anyways.
He was gonna be dead, but let's just say a rock that came on top of him just accelerated that. What puzzles me about this book is that it makes a big deal about Darabit feeling guilty of Buck's death, even though it was not by Darabit's hand, which caused that. So I don't know why he's like.
I think this is a case of, if I wasn't a Sith at that point, we wouldn't be fighting at that point, and so we wouldn't have been in the vicinity of the thought bomb. I think that's what's going on here.
But you have to read Jedi vs. Sith to understand the relationship between the three cousins.
Oh, do not get me wrong. I know that. Like, it's already a problem that Githany has absolutely nothing to do with Darabit now, so now it's like, well, okay, that's not canon anymore, I guess. So then, when the hell did he join the Khan's Brotherhood?
I mean,
if Carpentine had just, been a bit more conservative when it came to just adapting Jedi versus Sith, we could have easily, done something with Darabit in the previous book.
Yeah, and something that was crucial about Darabit's character in Jedi vs. Sith is that he was an arrogant little piece of shit, right?
Mm.
He was obnoxious.
And that was his downfall, because he thought the Jedi were so great heroes, they were invincible, and he started to have a breakdown after seeing the Jedi dying all around him, and consider people like Tor not to be a real Jedi. So that was a crucial thing, because by the end of the Jedi vs. Sith, Darabit learns that he was too arrogant, he was too, fanboying over the Jedi, and after all the war stopped, I think it affected him in ways, but I don't think the book deals with his arrogance or any of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, if you didn't read Jedi vs. Sith, I should say if you did read Jedi vs. Sith, after a humbling experience like that, it would change you, especially 10 years later, but we never really get, at least from what I could tell, we didn't really get any kind of introspection from him. He speaks about how guilty he is about what happened, about how he regrets what he did while on Rusan, but again, we don't really get some kind of introspection from him. Of course, later on, he gets really, really annoying in regards to something else.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I liked about Jedi vs. Sith was where it ended Darabit's character. I was excited to see what would happen to this guy after the shit he went through in that book. And it ends with him asking, oh, what do I do now? And then one of the bouncers says something like, live like a man. It's like, a man. All right, then. And then he walks off into the desert before him.
Yes,
And then he just becomes a fucking hermit.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the bouncer, I do have a problem with that, because in Jedi vs. Sith, there was a quote saying something like, a war will happen or something, a night will come, and the prisoners shall be free. Some kind of poem like that. was mentioned partially in Jedi vs. Sith. Now, in case you don't know why I'm talking about this poem and think it's not important, is because the Battle of Ruusan is not just a prequel for the Phantom Menace and Darth Bane. In case you forgot, the Battle of Ruusan is also a prequel for Dark Forces. So when Jedi vs. Sith ends with the poem of "A night shall come, a battle will be fought, and the prisoners shall be free," that was a direct reference to Kyle Katarn. That one day Kyle Katarn will arrive to the Ruusan and free the people inside the thought bomb. Why is that removed? I know it's not important to the greater plot, but you can't just ignore something like that, okay?
That isn't the only thing that that rule of two changed. If you notice the scenes in which Darabit visits the thought bomb, well, in Jedi vs. Sith, he just arrives there like merely to check the thought bomb. He's like, all of them inside, I don't understand. And then Darth Bane and Sana arrive immediately, and they already see Darabit in the thought bomb. Whereas in the book, Bane and Sana had arrived to the thought bomb, but Darabit was not there. He was actually hiding to hear who were the voices he was hearing. And then he recognizes, oh wait, it's Rain, and then he goes rushing to them. So the encounter is different there. Now they're a bit losing his right hand because of Sana. That's still there. But then another big thing happens. In Jabber Sith, Kitani dies when Bane is checking the thought bomb. But in this book, nah, she's already dead. So.
Yeah, Kitani turning to a skeleton and looking like a deranged old grandma or something, right?
Yep, indeed. So
So one of the things that if I remember Jedi vs. Sith correctly, I haven't read it since Path of Destruction, but from what I gathered, David could use the Force. Like, he wasn't, like, barely attuned to it. Like, he could use it, and if he trained, he would be able to, like, fully unlock that power. And the reason he didn't die from the thought bomb is just due to sheer fucking luck. But here, though, it's firmly established that not only is he barely attuned to the Force, that the reason he couldn't make it as a Jedi or a Sith was because he's just not as connected to it as, say, Rain is, or Zana is, which I do not buy for a fucking second was the case in Jedi vs. Sith. He was just an arrogant douche nozzle who couldn't accept reality. And he has a realization that, any time I had used the Force as a kid, it was because of our connection, Zana. You were the one who did it, not me.
I like it made ambiguous about Darabit wondering why he survived, because that is a question Darabit has to wonder for the rest of his life, because while he could suffer from PTSD while thinking all these people died, why am I the only one?
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah. But then Rule 2 just comes out of nowhere and says, nah, Darabit, you survived because you lack the Force. What kind of lame resolution is that?
And also, we don't get anything in the vein of him. Well, I should say, we don't get any kind of PTSD out of him. I mean, granted, getting PTSD isn't always a guarantee, but I feel like with what he had been through at that age, and what he would have to live with for the rest of his life, I think that would have made for a far more interesting story. That's where I think that was the logical continuation of his story. Yeah, he's trying to live life as a man, but after an experience like that, I mean, an orb that is the manifestation of like hundreds of living beings trapped in this object that should like break your fucking mind at wondering how the fuck that works. But no, we don't really get anything like that. He just lives as a hermit for the next 10 fucking years. I feel like Carbon didn't like capitalize on a really interesting story here. I think Darabit was fucking wasted in this novel.
Speaking of that, we still have contradictions and weird dialogues. It's not more of a contradiction if you think about it from Path to Destruction's perspective. Like you said, Hence, an internal consistency is what Drew Competition does, but not for the comic and the short story, right?
Yeah.
So basically, Bane says to Zana, when Zana is kind of feeling guilty that she and Bane were the only four sensitives, well, not the only, they were one of the few that only survived, and Zana felt guilty. Bane says something like, their deaths were not an accident, it was intentional. Now, the reason why I have such problems with this dialogue is, no, Bane, their deaths were an accident. The whole Bane tricked Khan and the Brotherhood to commit mass suicide is something Drew Carfishin came up with. Not the other writers, not Kevin J. Anderson, not whoever wrote Jedi vs. Sith. It was you who came up with that idea. Stop trying to make excuses. Their deaths were accidents.
There's that indeed. Speaking of different dialogue, of course, Bane of the Sith has its dialogue and scenes retconned by this book, so there is that. Another thing I noticed is that apparently the environment and the climate are also kind of different, mostly the climate, because in Bane of the Sith is described as being like rainy with thunderstorms, but in Rule of Two, it's sunny, pretty fine. The only thing is that the trees are like obscuring the sunlight. So it was sunny in the book, but in the magazine, Gamer 3, it's rainy with all sorts of thunders. So which one is it in there?
Oh, yeah, speaking of Bane of the Sith, I keep having problems with this thing because I remember what is written. Bane of the Sith makes it clear that the ghost of Cordis is the one who's constantly hunting Bane, while Rule of Two just views Cordis as some kind of a hallucination Bane is having. And, but in Bane of the Sith, it was made ambiguous whether the Khan's corporal spirit was actually real or Bane was hallucinating. You could have actually think, did Khan Spirit actually somehow manage to escape the thought bomb? But Rule of Two outright says, no. Hortus and Khan's spirit that is in the book, they're hallucinations. Okay. What do you think, Vincent?
Problem with that, with Carpentine firmly establishing what is happening. My bigger issue is the fact that, I think you could have left it ambiguous here, where Bane really has no fucking idea, instead of him just outright stating, oh yeah, no, you're just a hallucination, I'm just gonna ignore you so I won't get crazy. But yeah, I do feel like this is a problem with Carbon-Shin when it comes to this trilogy. Instead of going with a far more interesting angle or story, he just doesn't. He'll explain something, sure, don't get me wrong, I love my self-explanations, but in my opinion, it's not, it's really the right way. Going back to the thought bomb for a moment, in Jedi vs. Sith, when Zana blows up Darovit's fucking hand, we don't really get any indication as to what's going through Zana's head when she does that. If I remember correctly, she does that. Bane asks her, well, are you going to kill him? And she says, no, there's no point in his death. And then just fucking leaves. And, like I said, we have no indication as to what's going through her head. And reading that comic, my initial thought was that that's not her trying to protect Darovit. That's to prove to the audience that, yeah, she's with the Sith. There is, at least as far as we can tell, no turning back. She's, fully embracing this new side of the Force she's experiencing. When she says there is no point in Darovit's death, she means it. She feels any emotional connection she once felt to Darovit is gone. But in this book, no. The reason she blew up his hand was to protect him. And now, granted, that doesn't outright contradict Jedi vs. Sith, but I would argue that it's far less interesting. Like I said, Jedi vs. Sith, really pushed the idea that this is the moment that Zana is like fully embracing the dark side. She's with Bane. But in here, she is still with Bane, but she still has a connection to Daredevil, which I think kind of undermines her character arc. I don't particularly like the idea that she did that to protect Daredevil, especially when, after the fact, she couldn't give less of a fuck about him. I mean, yeah, sure, the book tries to say that she does still kind of care about him, but it's all just bullshit. She really doesn't.
Especially
You know,
the book ends.
speaking of Xana, I do have a praise to give to Competition. It's because there was something weird going on before Rule 2 book. It's because Bane of the Sith first introduced Bane going to Onderon, right, to find a new apprentice. Find an apprentice. And then Jedi vs. Sith outright shows Bane having Xana as an apprentice. So the reader's wondering, like, what do you mean, Bane, you're looking for an apprentice? You have Xana. What up to Xana? Now, the new essential guide to characters does state Bane did find his apprentice on Onderon, but is this apprentice Xana or someone else? History lesson. New essential guide to chronology does state, yes, that apprentice is indeed Xana, but it doesn't explain why Bane had to find Xana in Onderon in the first place, right? This book does explain why Bane and Xana had to arrive differently.
It does astound me that he went through that much trouble for this, but then you go back to Path of Destruction and he didn't even fucking try with that book. In this case, it's not him, like, in Path of Destruction, he was using a 5 issues, right? Yeah, a 5-issue mini-series, and he just completely fucked it up. But here, you have more obscure sources, or at least sources of information that are a bit more hidden than a 5-issue comic, and yet this, he's able to get down perfectly.
Yeah.
I would love to be the fly on the wall of the writer's room when he, like, decided this would be the way to go. Like, why this particular instance and not the entirety of Path of Destruction?
Who knows on that? There is one thing I gotta mention, and so I was reading the Gamer Tree right now, and the last sentence it says, "In Bloodshed and Chaos, Darth Bane will go to Onderon, and there he would find his apprentice." So it doesn't say an apprentice; it says his apprentice.
Yeah, but that makes it ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
Is his apprentice meaning his new apprentice, or does his apprentice mean Xana? Like, why was it written like that? Was there no communication between Jedi vs. Sith writer and...
When was Bane of the Sith written?
Bane
of the Sith was written one day... released one day before the first issue of Jedi vs. Sith.
And both would have been worked on around the same time, one would think. I mean, I think this is just a case of... I mean, honestly, I think there could have been communication between Anderson and the writers of Jedi vs. Sith, or at the very least, intermediated through Lucasfilm. Like, Bane of the Sith ends with him saying, "Oh, I'm going to find my apprentice." But of course, you wouldn't want to say who this apprentice is, because then that would just give away what's going to happen in the comic. So keep it vague in the story, and then once you get to the final issue of Jedi vs. Sith, suddenly it falls into place. But then the question then becomes, why the hell aren't they together?
Yeah.
Oh, we're not going to get the answer to that until years later, and it's going to have to take retconning the entire fucking comic and the short story just to answer that question.
Yeah.
I mean, it was answered eventually, right? Like, how many years later? 6 years?
Yeah, it was.
At that point, some people might have actually graduated college and high school and middle school.
I'm sure most people even forgot about both sources.
Yeah.
Something that did astound me is that, and I don't know, okay, this is more of a me thing, but I don't know why, but after my initial reading of this, way back when, for some reason, I thought Zana was described as wearing Jedi robes. Again, I don't know where the hell that came from, and then I was shocked to see, upon the second reading, that, oh no, she's actually described as wearing what she wore in Jedi vs. Sith. And it got me thinking, wow, you go through the effort of explaining what she was wearing in that comic, and yet you still can't describe what Farfalla's legs look like.
Speaking of describing Farfalla, like I previously mentioned, the Fairwind looks like the same as it was shown in Jedi.
Well, the book specifically says it resembled an old sailing barge. You gotta love the fact that Covington went through great efforts to minimize the amount of fantasy elements of the comic, only to have that. I mean, granted, he doesn't describe its appearance, but the fact that he uses the words resembling an old sailing barge. What the fuck?
I mean, that means it is what it was in Jedi vs. Sith. That's the only way that could be understood. Because in an interview in 2006 on one of the Star Wars forums, I think Drew Carpenter tried to justify his writing by saying he wanted to remove the fairy tale-like depictions of Jedi vs. Sith.
You know, out of all the things that he retconned from Jedi vs. Sith, the one thing that actually would have really benefited from a retcon, and he doesn't do it.
No, it's not even just the shit he retconned, it's also just the shit he doesn't say. Like I said, even though every other alien species and the humans have their physical features described, Farfalla is the only one who doesn't have his fucking Vader legs described, and the fact that his envoy or his messenger was basically a harpy. But Carpenter decides to specify what his ship kinda sorta resembles. If I read these books and in my head Farfalla is a human, that is a problem because he is not a fucking human. That is a failure on the writer's part, Carbishin.
I mean, Carbishin tried to justify this in one of this interview by saying he didn't need to describe what it looked like because he thought the writers would already know, and not the writers. The readers already knew because they read Jedi vs. Sith.
Such bullshit.
Wait, what? Okay.
Because every other alien species is described, and of course, with this being Star Wars, we wouldn't have to know that, Twi'leks have Lekus and shit like that. Or hell, how about the fact that Githany was described as dark-skinned and hot? Oh yeah, if you read Jedi vs. Sith, so I wouldn't have to tell you that Farfalla has these legs, but I gotta describe how hot Githany looks.
Farfalla's entire existence in this book is a distraction. Because the reason is, it's not supposed to be alive, you idiot!
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that does make you wonder. Like, how the hell did he manage to get that approved from Lucasfilm in terms of?
I mean,
characters dead?
in this interview also does have another excuse. I read this because he says Farfalla's death actually appears in a flashback talked by one of the soldiers, and Confucian tries to justify this by saying, the soldiers is not a reliable source. It's not the reliable information. The flashback drone could not be taken 100% seriously. Hello, Mr. Confucian. What the hell does that supposed to mean?
Not to mention, as far as it's presented in Jedi vs. Sith, we have no reason to believe that. What we see is what we get.
This reminds me of those idiots during Mandalorian Season 2 trying to claim that Boba is not a reliable source, so he's still not a Mandalorian. Remember that? Reach.
I don't remember. I did not see anyone arguing that point.
Oh, they did try to argue that point by saying Boba Fett is not a reliable source and is untrustworthy or some whatever.
I will say this as a positive because there are positives here. I do like the fact that, like the first book, we get a look into what Darksiders think about, what they're like. Zana kills people, even though I wish she wouldn't feel bad about it, because I really, really think that her blowing up Darth hand is like, yes, she is gone. There is no redeeming her. She still feels bad for the people she kills, fine, whatever, but at the very least, we do see that, yeah, she does feel bad sometimes, but she's growing to learn to just not give a shit about other people.
I mean, I don't know whether this is a contradiction or not, because Star Wars Legacy comic has Darth Craig looking at a holocron of Darth Bane, and Darth Bane specifically tells Darth Craig, power is the means itself. Power isn't something that you use as a tool to accomplish some bigger purpose. Power itself is the means. And then when Zana tells Bane she joined the Sith because she wanted power, Bane outright says power is not a means to an end. It is means to accomplish a great purpose. So what is it, Bane? Is power the means itself or a tool for the greater good or something? Like,
which came first?
Star Wars Legacy, that comic came out in 2006. Short, not so much after the release of Path of Destruction. So, in case you people forgot, Drew Carpetier's ego trip hasn't exactly finished. Because to me, it looks like Drew Carpetier wants to say, hey, I am the one who makes the definitive bait, no one else. This is what it feels to me like what this is.
Speaking of Carpentier and some of his writing choices, I find it interesting that in the first book, Githany is specifically described as hot. Because, of course, the one prominent female character in the story is described as hot. And then Zana in this, too, the one prominent female character is also described as hot. I mean, sure, we got some of the male characters described as handsome, but still, the one prominent female character, and she's, like, really fucking attractive. I see what you're doing there, Carpentier.
Sounds like somebody doesn't like the writer pretty much glorifying physical attractiveness.
It's just so painfully obvious. Like, twice now, the one prominent female character is described as hot. And, like, I don't hear him describing Bane as handsome.
Well, to be fair, Bane was a muscle, bald-headed dude. And you rarely find muscle, bald-headed dudes handsome. Unless it's freaking Bruce Willis or something.
Or being this so.
From a societal perspective, muscle-bound, tall, could kick anyone's ass. You could describe that as handsome. Look, whatever. Point is, it was really distracting. Because, of course, you know, you don't describe Zana as, like... I don't think she's ever described as, like, cute when she's a child. But the moment she's of age... Oh, yeah. Hot. I will say this. Double-bladed lightsaber. It's never specifically said, but who was the Zabrak in Path of Destruction? Who was his rival?
Zirak.
It's never specifically... Well, he's never specifically referenced here, but the fact that he had Zana learn to use a double-bladed lightsaber... I mean, yeah, sure, he does give an explanation. You know, it's to compensate for her lack of, like, physical strength, but still, I think it's interesting, like, yeah, like, there's a reason he chose a double-bladed lightsaber, and it wasn't just for that.
Yeah, but I kind of like it when, you know, Exar Kun and Darth Maul were the unique Sith Lords who had double-bladed lightsabers. It seems like it isn't that much special nowadays.
Back when I was a kid and Darth Maul was the only character I saw with a double-bladed lightsaber, until we got Savage Opress in the Clone Wars, I did see it as a unique weapon, but now, I mean, yeah, sure, you don't see it often, but you see it enough so it's not that special. Personally, I just love the double-bladed lightsaber, so anytime I see a character use it, especially a Sith, oh yeah, sign me up. Yeah, it's good that I like Zana as a Sith. Like, once she gets over the whole, oh, but I feel bad about killing people sometimes. Oh, yes. This is the type of shit I wish we saw more of. Just Sith and other Darkseid users doing Darksider shit and not feeling any kind of remorse. Because God only knows I am so fucking sick of Star Wars stories where the quote-unquote bad guy redeems themselves in the end. Like, fuck that story trope. Fuck it. More of this.
Which, ironically, that trope has been done so many times in Disney Star Wars. Look at the latest Kenobi show.
But I have some good things to praise about some symbolic things. Tarsus Valorum is the first chancellor of the Rusan Reformation Republic, right?
Yeah.
And although Finis Valorum isn't the last chancellor of the Republic, but he was the last before Palpatine. So it's like symbolic thinking about it, is because the Republic basically started with Valorum and ended with a Valorum.
Mm-hmm.
One is praise. The ancestor Valorum is praised for being the one who brought peace to the galaxy and unification, while his descendant is the one who's considered, incompetent, ineffective, and, at the end, later got removed due to vote of no competence, right? So, seeing the two, comparing the two is, like, interesting.
It's like poetry. They sort of rhyme.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Something I just found right now, and I guess kind of speaks to Karpyshyn's mentality when it comes to I don't like what's already established in Star Wars. I'd rather take it my way. And it's that there was this one interview he did in 2007 called "Confessions of a Fanboy." Appropriate title, that he pretty much said that he got into a fight with his best friend on the school playground because when his friend saw Empire Strikes Back before he did, Karpyshyn refused to believe Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. And you thought Luke had it tough dealing with this news while missing his hand? Imagine me in the theater the next day with my puffed up lip and black eye watching in horror, tears screaming down my cheeks. I saw, it's not true, it's not true! So I guess he's one of those that doesn't really like, this is what Star Wars already established. Not a fan of it. If I got a chance, I could change it. So
I wonder if Karpyshyn was actually old enough to write the novelization of the original trilogy. I wonder what the hell he would have done.
I don't think he would have been able to do much. I mean, granted, I don't know how much oversight would have been given or was given to those original novelizations, but I'm sure he wouldn't have been able to do much.
I bet he would have definitely did a few things, at least for the episode 5 one. Oh, I bet he would. Or at least try to soften the blow of Anakin being Darth Vader.
This book also does something good. Two things. One is it finally removed that stupid a novel of the Old Republic, which it, I do not understand what the purpose of a novel of the Old Republic was. Why is it there?
Well, I mean...
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's there in Dynasty of Evil, but not in this one for some reason.
No, it is in here.
Whoa.
At least in the hardcover I have. It's in the title page.
Yeah.
It's not on the cover for some reason, but it's in the book on the cover page.
So, I mean, I don't understand. Partially in 1000 BBY, before the Rusan Reformation, it is still the Old Republic, right? But after the Rusan Reformation, this book is basically in this weird era between the Old Republic and the prequel trilogy, right?
You could say
The so-called Rise of the Empire era.
Yeah.
Why are you still calling this a novel of the Old Republic? It isn't.
Well, half of it. Is it fair to say half, or is it more like a...
I say half. So
I mean, I think it's fair enough to call this a novel of the Old Republic because the start of the novel is set in the Old Republic. So I think it's fair enough, but once we get to the third book, there is literally no reason.
the only reason, I guess, would be
Well, just to keep consistency with the other novels of the trilogy.
yeah, that.
But
and marketing.
then why wasn't it in the cover?
Hell if I fucking know.
No idea. For some reason, they wanted it
So-
to be said inside the book instead of outside.
I think that might have just been a mistake.
Could have.
I'm wondering, like you said before, answering the Path of Destruction, was this a novel of the Old Republic somehow supposed to be its own line of books?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Henson?
I mean, I think that might have just been a marketing thing.
Yeah, I think so too, honestly.
Like, oh, KOTOR is considered the greatest fucking thing ever. It's better than Jesus. So it's like, yeah, let's call this a novel of the Old Republic because when people nowadays, when you hear the word Old Republic, you don't immediately think to what Obi-Wan says in Episode 4. You think of KOTOR.
Of course.
So I think that was the intention there. Now, whether or not this would have been the start of a new lineup, like more novels of the Old Republic tagline, or more usage of a novel of the Old Republic tagline, I have no idea. Like, maybe, but since this was, yeah, these are like the only novels released like of this like era, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar thing like the Clone Wars multimedia project did have their book saying a Clone Wars story.
You know, I just noticed something when seeing the covers of the Darth Bane trilogy. So turns out that if you take a look at every other like cover from other parts of the world, like I don't know, Polish, German, or whatever, like for Path of Destruction, some of them don't even say a novel of the Old Republic. And then if we go to Rule of Two, like only the English one says, well, actually no, Dynasty of Evil. Only the English one says novel of the Old Republic. The others is like, don't even bother saying it. So I think it could have been simply a marketing thing, especially because the Knights of the Old Republic was made by BioWare, you know, a United States company, and released on PC and OG Xbox. And those two fan bases definitely drive more in the Americas. I think I'm definitely leaning more towards, novel of the Old Republic, used for marketing. Yeah, I'm leaning towards that.
I mean, especially when you remember how much Revan is referenced in Path of Destruction.
Oh yeah.
I think all signs point to it being a marketing thing.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Revan, he's not in Rule of Two. I did not.
Yeah, he's not referenced once.
Hallelujah, I guess.
Of course, now the problem is, why the hell isn't he referenced after all the simping Bane did in the previous book?
I guess.
I do not buy for a second Bane would just, like, drop him.
I guess my theory is I guess someone called him out on that. The Lucasfilm higher-ups. Drew, you gotta stop doing this. I know Revan is one of your most proud accomplishments, but stop doing that. And Drew's like, fine.
Like, don't get me wrong. I do like the fact that Revan is not referenced once, because, my god, I already think at this point, he was overrated as a character, because he didn't have a fucking character. Not really. Mm-hmm. But, Jesus fucking Christ, having Revan be, like, the main influence behind Bane's creation of the Rule of Two was just insulting. Like, Revan was not I would not describe Revan as the greatest fucking Sith Lord of all time, or like the last great Sith. Like, get out of here with that shit.
You wanna know what's insulting about, inspiration for Rule of 2 then? Here comes Rule of 2, when there was like a reference to Exar Kun when Bane appears in, Dachshund, right?
Yeah, when he's a Dachshund.
He describes that he once read about a dark Jedi called Exar Kun. Okay, get out of here with that. I can't take this thing any more seriously. Now, Drew Carpenter is calling Exar Kun a dark Jedi?
Granted, he could have meant Exar Kun when he was searching the tomb, before he actually.
Well, I mean, aren't dark Jedi, or at least a definition of a dark Jedi, is someone who was once a Jedi who turned to the dark side?
No.
I remember I read the 20th anniversary. I believe it was that or the special anniversary re-release of Heir to the Empire, with the silver cover. In it, Timothy Zahn has a bunch of annotations on the sides of each page, giving notes and stuff. And at one point in Heir to the Empire, I think it's Leia who describes Sidious and Vader as dark Jedi.
Okay, so
obviously this being at a point in time where we hadn't really figured out the whole Sith thing yet. And yeah, the term Sith existed, but we didn't really have all the details figured out yet. And I mean, if I remember correctly, the annotation Zahn had for that particular section was that, he wrote a line like that because, we didn't really have a fine-tuned idea of what, a Sith was, so Dark Jedi seemed appropriate. But he goes on to say that it was later retconned to say that, or the term Dark Jedi was eventually used as a term to describe Jedi who turned to the dark side. Which would obviously relate to Vader, and with Sidious, Leia wouldn't know, so yeah, it would make sense to call him a Dark Jedi.
No. The Dark Jedi, in modern day EU terms, is a broad definition of a Force user who is a dark side Force user. But here's the thing. So yes, in technical terms, Sidious is a Dark Jedi, Vader is a Dark Jedi, Exar Kun is a Dark Jedi. Yes, but the Sith would rather want to call themselves a Sith instead of the Dark Jedi. And people like Exar Kun did way more for the Sith legacy to just be called a Dark Jedi. You know where I'm coming from with this?
This is the same guy who barely referenced Exar Kun in any meaningful way in the previous book, so I think him referring to Exar Kun as a Dark Jedi is appropriate. Naga Sidal, at least, was given the descriptor of he kinda did Sith alchemy, so that's important, I guess. Exar Kun, his exploits weren't even referenced by Bane in Path of Destruction. Exar Kun was just name-dropped 3 times. So it's him just calling Exar Kun a Dark Jedi, showing no amount of respect to him, is honestly in line with this version of Bane.
Yeah, so we started from the main dude who was the inspiration for Darth Bane's Rule of 2 to a Dark Jedi.
Maybe Carpenter just did not like Exar Kun for some reason. That would explain why he's acknowledged in Path of Destruction, but given no further explanation on who the fuck he is. And in this book, he's just referred to as a Dark Jedi instead of, a Sith. One of the main players in was it the First Great Schism?
But I really don't buy that reasoning also and don't understand it because while Drew Carpenter and his team doesn't go on too much, Exar Kun is described as a Sith Lord in the first KOTOR game, mentioned by, the Rodian in the Yavin station, and by Jolie Bindo.
Carpenter was just a lead writer, he wasn't the only writer. Not to mention, when you're working on a game, there's a lot more cooks in the kitchen, if you will, while in this case, it's a solo act, mostly.
I think the reason why he dislikes Exar Kun could be a similar reason as to why he dislikes Darth Vader being Luke's father, in which it doesn't align with what he thought would be the character or something when he was first experiencing Star Wars media before actually working under Lucasfilm. Maybe that could be the case. As Carpenter would put it in one of his interviews, confessions of a fanboy. So maybe that's.
I'm on the belief that Drew Carpenter did know. He definitely did know Exar Kun was the inspiration for Bane's Rule of Two. But he decided to deliberately change it to satisfy his own ego.
Yeah, we don't even have to speculate on that. I mean, given what he did to Jedi vs. Sith and what he has said himself to justify his own decision-making, let's face it, the only reason Exar Kun was even referenced in Path of Destruction is because of what the original backstory was.
Yeah.
Reference Exar Kun because, in this bio, in the essential guide to characters or whatever, Exar Kun is referenced, so okay, fine, if I have to acknowledge it, here it is, but he's not going to be that important now. Revan, oh, God, yeah, Revan.
Oh, yeah.
Revan, the most important thing created in Star Wars since A New Hope novelization.
God. Yeah.
Like Revan and KOTOR, I mean, let's be honest, guys, that saved the entire Star Wars franchise.
I think I have seen a few people actually say that KOTOR is like one of the only few good Star Wars games.
So you know what? While you're watching in the old days when the EU was still canon, while you're watching the prequel trilogy, you keep reminding of Drew Carpenter. These Siths were all inspired by Revan.
I mean, honestly, now that you mentioned the prequels, I can just imagine if Carpenter wrote the prequels, just having scenes of Darth Sidious looking at a picture of Revan and just smiling giddily at it.
And let's also not forget he would find some way to literally soften the blow of, Anakin becoming Darth Vader because he hates Darth Vader being Luke's father. Don't forget that.
At last we reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we'll have revenge for what the Jedi did to Darth Revan.
Oh my God, can you imagine that actually was a thing?
I believe that's how he would write that line.
Oh my God.
Just thinking about how Revan is this main important guy in his, accomplishment affected the entire George Lucas 6 movies. God!
If it weren't for Revan, the Rule of Two would not have been created, and thus making Lucas's entire saga not exist.
Oh my God.
Like, think about that for a fucking moment. This character, who's not even a character at this point in time, is the whole reason Lucas's saga happened. 4,000 years ago.
I mean,
I think Jesus fucking Christ.
I think that is one of the reasons. This is my just theory. I think that is the reason why it wasn't mentioned. Revan wasn't mentioned in this novel because I think the hierarchy was saying like, Drew, okay, enough is enough. We let you do that on the first.
Get it? You were the lead writer of KOTOR.
Yeah, we get it. You're the lead writer of KOTOR, okay? You had your fun with Revan being the inspiration of all 6 Star Wars films. It stops now.
Oh my God.
Yes, we get it. Revan is the most popular Star Wars character in the entire universe. You don't need to keep reminding people that you were the one who created him.
I just thought of a what if scenario that could have happened in Rule of Two. Or that imagine that Darth Bane is literally watching Darth Revan's holocron again, or reading some stuff about, or actually making some fan fiction of Darth Revan. I don't know. And then Sana walks in and she's like, "Oh, you're again reading those notes about that Sith Lord. Aren't you have enough?" And Bane would be like, "No, I will never be satisfied. I need more Darth Revan." And someone's like, suit yourself. God,
I mean,
imagine-
it's a wonder he wasn't mentioned when it's in the parts of Duxon and Ondron, since Revan was in Mandalorian Wars on those planets.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention, he's not even referenced when they go to Tython. And of course, Carpentine just couldn't fucking help himself, could he? No. He couldn't Revan wasn't referenced, but God forbid we can't have a Darth Bane book without KOTOR being referenced at least once. So here's Tython.
Oh, speaking of that, KOTOR 2 is referenced, finally, General.
Oh,
What
yeah.
kind of?
Actually, Henson, Titan is a soul. That's the power of the Jedi source book.
Let's be honest with ourselves, General. When people hear the name Tython, they think of KOTOR. And let's also be honest with ourselves. This is Drew Carpentine we're talking about. We know why he had them go to Tython.
Wait a minute. Where was Titan mentioned or referenced in KOTOR 1?
Is that not the planet where the Jedi are located?
Nah, that's Dantooine.
No, that's Dantooine.
Oh, no.
But,
Well, never mind then.
no, but it still kind of applies to a certain degree.
Titan's
Ondron
not,
and Duxon are there.
Titan's doesn't even have an appearance in KOTOR. Not even a mention.
But, okay, so Ondron and Duxon and the Beast Riders are mentioned, but I don't know if that was a reference to Bane of the Sith, specifically, or KOTOR 2.
Beast Riders, they easily Tales of the Jedi. So the same will go. The same I'd argue for Doxon. I mean, Freedom Nat is from Tales of the Jedi, so it had to be Tales of the Jedi.
But I think the KOTOR is still mentioned in some way, because I think for some weird reason, Drew Carpentine mentions cat hounds.
Oh yeah, I do think KOTOR is referenced in this book, but Titan is.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, I see where I made the mistake. So, seems like it was, first appeared in Rule of 2, but then it went on to be heavily used in
So
SWTOR,
yeah.
and also Dawn of the Jedi.
Which
That was a mistake on my part.
Something you need to know is, like, I think this is the point where the KOTOR comics was still going on, so, you get enough references. What references? What? Since the KOTOR comic was still an ongoing series by the time this book was released, you don't need more reference, and SWTOR was still in development. So I think it was more of a company secrecy.
I guess that could be the case. But by the way, not a surprise that KOTOR 2 is not mentioned at all. If it was in the first book, why would it be in the second book?
Kind of. It does reference a Sith Lord who drained the planet for life or destroyed the planet.
But it's indirect, so it barely
So
counts.
it's indirectly referencing Darth Nihilus.
Actually,
And even then,
that reference.
are we sure that he's specifically referencing Darth Nihilus, or it's just he's talking about a Sith Lord that just so happens to line up with Nihilus?
I just saw the only reference I saw is the Sith Lord that destroyed a sun. I actually didn't get the one of Sith Lord draining planet. I think it was destroying planet, the one you meant.
Yeah, destroying the planet was mentioned in Rook 2, and I think that was a reference for Nihilus.
I didn't get
And in every other instance, Bane references the name of the Sith Lord he's talking about, but in this case, he doesn't.
Yeah, now, since we're talking about it, what about jumping to 10 years later?
Yeah.
Because we've been ranting about 10 years prior, but there are still a lot to rant about in the 10 years later section.
Yeah.
So I think, like with the pre-10 years, like just give like briefest of summaries and then just let us ride
Okay.
whatever rant we go on, because
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Now, quick note. I just saw, and apparently it's listed that Nihilus has an indirect mention in Rule of 2. So I guess it is him. So,
But here's the thing, though. Like, I mean, given its Carpentine, it's hard to say. But either it's he didn't want to directly reference KOTOR 2, so the indirect way was the method of choice, or he wasn't intending on referencing Nihilus, and he just so happened to describe a force ability that Nihilus is known for.
Force train.
Either one, I think, is likely.
There's that. Anyway, so okay, so just leaving that note. Okay, so part two, the basically post 10 years. So okay,
The Jedi vs. Sith sequel you've been waiting for.
yeah. So okay, 10 years happens. Sana's now a woman. She's a beautiful woman, if that's what the book. Yeah, the book says that. Then of course she's now a Sith sorcerer. She pretty much is like working with this Twi'lek in order to join the anti-republic, some sort of anti-republic group that is going to pretty much orchestrate a strike or some sort of big event to pretty much cause an uproar on the republic, and in particular in I believe in Sereno, yeah, Count Dooku's home planet. So yeah, and they decide, yeah, let's pretty much kill Chancellor Balloorum, or ex-Chancellor Balloorum in this case. And so yeah, they go and do that, and plan fails. So plan fails because apparently Balloorum actually had a Jedi accompanying him, even though Balloorum wanted no guards, but he was welcomed having his Jedi, and that Jedi being Johun. Yes, the same Padawan that became a knight in the first part. So yeah. So that plan backfires. Meanwhile, while that happens, Bane is trying to create a holocron. He pretty much failed several times, pretty much making him be kind of pissed. So yeah, there's that. Then Sana pretty much gets kidnapped, or quote unquote kidnapped. She pretty much has to willingly go to the last two survivors of the failed attack. To meet this guy called Hetton, who pretty much, it turns out, is one of the main rulers of one of the houses of Sereno. And turns out this guy has a bit of a dark side force affinity because he's been reading on Sith artifacts shit that he has in his library. And after Sana murders all the guards, she pretty much is talking privately with Hetton. And Hetton is like, train me, I want to be the next Sith. And Sana's like, you're crazy. And then Hetton's like, I can help you kill Darth Bane, and I will become your Sith apprentice, something. And so they pretty much travel back to Ambria. They ambush Darth Bane, but Darth Bane pretty much is easily able to kill all of them. So yeah, and Sana pretty much gives Bane what she wanted, basically info on how to build a holocron, and so they pretty much set a plan in motion. Bane is going to Titan to pretty much get the holocron, while Sana goes to the Jedi Temple disguised as a Padawan that's been missing for like 5 years, and to pretty much find a cure on how to pretty much cure Bane from his Orbalists, because the Orbalists are starting to have Bane have some sort of rants and / rages that are causing him to lose control. So yeah, massive power, but no patience or control. So yeah. She manages to find the cure, but she's kind of found, or at least encounters, Derobit, who's there because Johun had pretty much went to Rosan because they were trying to build a monument in honor of the Jedi. Derobit was causing vandalism, so Johun went there to settle with it. They have a bit of a disagreement, and Johun pretty much takes Derobit to the Jedi Temple because Derobit pretty much said, "Oh, Sith are not dead. He's still alive. The one that's alive took my cousin." So yeah, so Johun and Derobit went to Coruscant or Jedi Temple, while Johun is talking to Farfalla to convince him. Derobit was in the Jedi Temple's library. He finds Sana, and so Sana, alarmed, they pretty much escape from there and go to Titan, and Johun and Farfalla follow suit with 3 other Jedi, and they arrive to Titan, and there Bane, Sana fight the Jedi, while Derobit is like cowering in some sort of locker, and the battle goes well as the Jedi dying, except that Bane got a humongous force lightning in his face because the attack backfired because one of the Jedis made a shield covering him, which pretty much caused the lightning to backfire. So yeah, he's severely injured, and several of the orbitalists release toxins inside him. So yeah, they have to heal him. So Sana takes the body of Bane and Derabit to Ambria to pretty much find Kalev to heal him. And yeah, they find Kalev, but Kalev is unwilling to this time cave in to help Bane, and since his daughter is not there, yeah, so there's no way to convince him. Let's just say that Sana had no solutions until Derabit is like, I talked to Kalev, he'll heal Bane, but you have to deliver yourself and Bane to the Jedi. So send a message drone and disable your ship, so do it. And so yeah, she does all of that, and the countdown is inevitable. The Jedi are gonna arrive, but Sana thinks of a last-minute plan, which is that pretty much she kills Kalev, mutilates the shit out of him, and uses her Sith sorcery to make Derabit go mad, go raging, go crazy, and when the Jedi show up, Derabit is like attacking them with Farfalla's lightsaber. The Jedi kill Derabit, and from that, the Jedi is like, this is the Sith Lord that killed all the Jedi, so yeah, that's about it. So mission done here. Nothing to see. There's no one else here. Let's go. Without, of course, them not seeing that Sana and Bane were hiding underneath the cover, the trapdoor that was in Kalev's camp. So yeah, and Sana repairs the ship. They escape, and yeah, that's where the book ends. So yep, that's the entirety of the second part. So yeah, what do you guys think of this?
Yeah, one stupid thing I noticed, I haven't thought about this until then, it's like, Derab is like, at least in his early 20s, like 10 years later, so the Jedi must have assumed, if a Sith Lord did survive 10 years ago, this guy should have been 10 years old. Hello, idiots, do you think a Sith Lord of 10 years old exists? Like, what is wrong with you? You honest? I don't care whether Derab was going mad with a lightsaber or not. And then you wonder if there was a 10-year-old Sith Lord during the Battle of Rusan? Are you guys this stupid?
I mean, granted, the Jedi did take, like, kids and teenagers to battle, too, so they probably assumed the same was the case for the Sith. So, I mean, child soldiers was a thing in the Jedi vs. Sith comic.
Soldier was a thing, but a Sith Lord that is 10 years old? You honestly think, even if a 10-year-old Sith Lord survived, what is he gonna do? Suppose that is true. I can't believe the stupidity of the Jedi in this book.
What do you think of that, Henson?
Okay, so although I do like the idea of ending this book in a not so great place, where the people we would call the bad guys won, and the people we would call good guys are none the wiser, and the tragedy that is Derabit's whole fucking existence. But I'm not a fan of what they did with, or what Carbonstein did with Derabit in this novel. What the ending of Jedi vs. Sith told me was that Derabit would just have to live with the baggage that was the Battle of Rusan and being, like, one of the few survivors of that whole fucking ordeal. But then, we skip 10 years. Derabit is a fucking hermit. Yeah, a hermit healer. We get the indication that he does think about the past, but he's not, like, I'm not saying he should be, like, suffering heavily from PTSD. Like, getting PTSD is not a guarantee after going through a traumatic experience. But I do think he should have had more introspection. He should have reflected on his past experience more than he did. And then we get to what he does with Zana. He is convinced that Zana is still redeemable, that there is still good in her, that, yes, the reason you blew up my fucking hand is because you were trying to save me. Again, I wish that wasn't the fucking case, but Zana but Zana said that's exactly why she did it at the start. So, for the rest of the fucking novel, we have him insisting that this isn't you. We as the audience know it's her, this is what she's become, but no, we have to have this character constantly repeat himself, and then we're just back into the same problem as Jedi versus Sith, where he would not shut the fuck up about how awesome the Jedi were, but then later on, never shutting up about how much they suck. And now he just can't shut up. Like, this is not how I envisioned his character going. Like, he is not interesting in this novel because his sole purpose is to, I guess, try to set up some false drama where, could Zana be redeemed, be pulled from the dark? I mean, we know she can't, but we got it. But it could, right? And then, of course, lead the survivors of Rusan, along with a few other Jedi, to their deaths, because, yeah, half Farfalla survived the thought bomb, only to kill him off in the very next fucking story.
And there's another character, in case you guys forgot. Joun Oto. Now, you might be wondering who this guy is, and
he's a nothing character in this fucking novel.
And the reason why I'm talking about is, this is another case of carbon using creation by other people. Now, to be honest with Jo-Hoon, before Rule of 2, she was even less of a character than what is in Rule of 2. It's pretty much consistent with how he was the one who wanted to have, memorial statues on Rusan. But the problem is, why are you taking these characters that are not yours and put them in the book and then just kill them off? Same thing with Farfalla.
At the very least, Farfalla is important to Jo-Hoon's character, but, like, the whole reason this book exists is to further delve into the relationship between Bane and Zana, see what their master-apprentice relationship is like, what Zana's training is like. But then you have to focus on all this other shit, too, that is... I mean, the shit with, like, the Rusan Reformation is interesting, but, like, after we skipped 10 years, like, did we really need a plot where the Jedi were this close to finding out about Bane and Zana? Was that really necessary?
Not
like,
really.
Yeah, exactly. Like, one of the things I really loved about the Plagueis novel was just us getting into, like, the seedy underbelly of just how deep how deep the Sith's connections went to, like, the greater galaxy. And that's alluded to in this book, but it's not focused on.
A good kind of, writing information is Zana being able to blend in with the Jedi, so she could disguise her Force aura as a light side, which I think is a kind of explanation for how Palpatine and the likes of Plagueis managed to be undetected by the Jedi, because the Sith developed their skills with their Force aura too much, to the point that at first they could disguise as a light side aura, then they could just pretend not to be a Force user in general. So I think that was a good explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But another minor problems I have is something like Heston seems to have a Chiss female assassin, and I'm just wondering, why the hell would a Chiss come to the Republic and join the Separatist movement during Bane's time? Like, why? Why is this Chiss female here? You might be saying that I'm talking about something that doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't, but, why is this Chiss lady in the Republic space now? Why aren't you, like, I thought the Chiss didn't really communicate with the Republic that much? No? Like, what is happening? Why is this Chiss
Someone who's unfamiliar with the political side of the Chiss, I don't have any comment here.
What about you, General? You with the New Jedi Order?
I read New Jedi Order. Yeah, I know that. Okay, so I know that the Chiss, they usually hang out in the unknown regions. I don't remember what the name of the planet was, but I know that they basically. Well, there are a few Chiss in the galaxy. Now, granted, I don't remember if she's like the only Chiss that shows up in during the Old Republic era. I know there was that Chiss bartender in Jedi Knight Jedi Outcast, but that was after the Tron trilogy. So maybe more Chiss arrived after that. So I don't think it's impossible for some Chiss people to be in the galaxy and not, and I don't think it's an impossibility. It's not like say the Yushun Bong, which them showing up in the galaxy before the attack that would definitely be a big problem. So they have to literally play it so low key. So I don't think it's a problem with that. I could see one, two, very few Chiss people appearing. Now, in regards to why a Chiss would be working for the Separatists, I got no comment on that. But I don't find it I don't find it weird that there is a Chiss that's not in the unknown region. I don't find that weird. But it is weird. This female Chiss is like with the Separatists. That is kind of weird.
At first, I thought it was a coincidence, right? Of all planets in this book that could be showing the separatist movement is Serrano. The birthplace of Count Dooku.
Yeah.
And it was just a random thing, but then you read the book more and you realize Hetton is a Darksider, and you might know where I'm going with this. Hetton is an older Darkside user.
Yeah, in his 50s.
Younger Darkside user, Zana, to be his master. I wonder where that came from. A Count of Serrano asking a younger Darkside Force user to be his master. Yeah, never seen that before, right?
I guess that.
So Palpatine was younger than Dooku?
Yes.
He was younger.
The more you know.
So it's not a coincidence to me, it seems. It was intentional. It was intentionally... Serrano as a planet was intentionally there, as I think Drew Karpyshyn's attempt to connect this book with the prequels. What a bunch of points.
Now that you explained it, I think this was just a case of either sheer fucking coincidence, which is always likely, or he did this in a George Lucas poetry it rhymes sort of thing, or just to be a reference. A wink wink nudge nudge to the audience.
Yeah, indeed. So there is that. Yeah.
This isn't an issue more with this book, but what this book here causes for the first book.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions the Sith Lord Belia Darzu. Now, why this is a problem is it finally mentions other Sith Lords that are from the new Sith Wars era.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Karpyshyn could have explained a lot of Sith Lords during the new Sith War era, like Darth Ruin, Belia Darzu, etc., but he did in the first book. And to say that Belia Darzu is a much earlier Sith Lord, so the fact that she isn't in any of the records in the Brother of Darkness, and Hetton was the one who managed to have secret details about her, yeah, that part is also not really believable to me. The Brother of Darkness should have at least have more info on the recent Sith Lords instead of the ones like Revan or who was it? Revan Nod, and you know the rest.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. I mean, Drew Karpyshyn not referencing stuff that should be kind of obvious to be referenced. I mean, that's just part of the course at this point. I mean, we saw it in the first book, saw it in this, and here, hell, we even saw it in the Republic Revan. So I'm not really surprised. This is just part of the course. So yeah. Now, in regards to the second part, if you ask me, I think it's probably the more interesting of the two, mostly because the first part is just, well, adaptations of two sources, Jedi versus Sith and Bane of the Sith, whereas the second is just it's more original, so I'll give it credit on that. It was more interesting the second half compared to the first half. I'm pretty sure you can agree with that, Henson, since you said that the most interesting part of the first book was, Bane's origin before starting with the Sith.
Yeah, the most interesting part of Path of Destruction was essentially the original stuff. Once we get to the Jedi versus Sith portion, that's when it starts having issues for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And in the case of this book, like I said previously, I get why we focused on Jedi characters, the Ruusan Reformation and all that, but to be perfectly honest, you did not need any of that. You could have easily explained the Ruusan Reformation through the eyes of Bane and Zana.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I think this book would have been a hell of a lot better if we didn't focus at all on the Republic side of things. We just focused on Bane and Zana doing their thing. To really just dive into how Bane was able to, make all these... To see Bane plan out these, century-long plans. Establishing all these various connections that would go on for a millennia. But no, instead it's briefly touched upon. We meet, one informant. It was a moon. And that's it, because, oh no, we gotta focus on the Jedi possibly finding out about the Rule of Two. And we gotta have Derevit here, even though he... Really, Derevit serves no fucking purpose, because there's, no attempt made for us to believe... I shouldn't say that. I think Carbonson is trying to convince us that Zana could be redeemed, but with how it's written, we know that's not gonna fucking happen. So Derevit trying to convince her doesn't mean anything. There's no tension there. What's the point of having him here? It's not like Zana cares about him at that point. She's more annoyed by him. I mean, I'm with her. He is very annoying here.
His character hasn't really changed that much since the ending of Jedi vs. Sith. He was annoying, obsessed with, and Jedi vs. Sith, he was like this. Oh, Jedi are so cool, they can't do anything wrong. And then towards the later parts, Jedi is bad, the Sith are cool. And then in Rule 2 is like, Zana, I believe in you, you can be redeemed. No, you can't, you idiot. What are you talking about?
Okay, so let me say this. Do you guys agree that we could remove all Republic portions of this? I mean, granted, you'd have to change the ending, but remove the Republic portions and focus entirely on Bane and Zana. Do you think that would have improved the book?
I mean, I think he should have removed, but I don't really know, because Farfalla's survival and towards the end of Path of Destruction, I think was meant to be that way, so he appears in Rule 2. So I don't know how that would work.
You would have had to make some other way for Farfalla to find a Sith and then get him killed. Let's just say Karpyshyn definitely rolled himself into a bit of a corner there. He had to kill Farfalla in some way because he didn't let him die.
Yeah, he made Farfalla survive at the end of Path of Destruction, but since he does absolutely nothing here, him not showing up wouldn't really change anything. I mean, hell, you could still do the whole, Farfalla survived and he had something to do with the Ruusan Reformation. Again, reference that in, a holo recording or something.
Yeah, element.
We don't need to focus on him. We don't need to focus on anything involving the Republic through the eyes of the Republic.
Yeah.
That just takes attention and time away from the two beings who the book is supposed to be about. The Rule of Two is the name of the fucking book, and yet they're only partially the focus, and even then, they spend a lot of time apart.
Yeah, it would be better if the title was Darth Bane, the Rusan Reformation. That would be a better title.
A more appropriate title for the content of this book. So that much is there.
Sometimes.
Or Darth Bane, a new republic. Get it? Pun.
Yeah, indeed. So,
But another one thing I almost forgot is the way how Darabin actually died versus what is shown in this book. You read what I sent you, General, right? Darabin's death was originally supposed to be in Rusan. Now, you might think, what's the big deal of Rusan? The reason why Rusan has a bigger impact than Ambria is because Rusan was the last time the two cousins were together. And to have this deadly confrontation between them finally end in the same place where they last saw has a bigger meaning than this random planet Ambria where Darth Bane previously almost died. What do you guys think about that?
Henson?
Like I said, I think it would have been more impactful if those two just never met again. Or at the very least, it took them a hell of a lot longer than a decade to meet again when they're, like, really fucking old. But, hell, tying into the idea of them meeting up on Rusan again, I think it would have been far more interesting to have, like, I don't know, a short story, maybe a comic miniseries or something of seeing David, like, just living life the best he can, but still never being able to let the past go. And then, years later, Zana has already, killed Bane. She's the current master of the Sith. She goes to Rusan for one reason or another. She meets David, and then just has, like, what's the word? She has, like, no second thought in just, like, killing him. No, like, or, now there'd be no point in his death then. I think it would have been really interesting if she goes to Rusan, but they don't fight. Like, yeah, or hell, not even have David trying to convince her to, like, come back to the light, because even he knows it's fucking pointless. They can chat, she can tell him her new philosophy or whatever. He just can't accept that, and then they just go their separate ways. Whatever happens, happens. Like, David didn't need to die. Especially in this regard, because, I mean, I don't know, I just, like, she makes him go insane.
David dying was already information that was set years before Rule 2.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we just didn't know when in relation to...
No, it does say it later.
It says that another was a Sith Lord Darsana who returned to the valley years after abandoning her brother there during the Battle of Ulsan and engaged her sibling in a final deadly confrontation.
Okay, and then in that case, she goes to Rusan just to see what has happened to her cousin. She sees what a wreck he's become, and then decides, okay, I'm just gonna allow myself this one moment of, mercy, and kills him to end his suffering.
I mean, it's a common similarity you have is like these dual competition novels that features characters like Zana, Bane, and Darabin. They make these things so vague and not detailed enough for person like dual competition so you can write whatever the hell they want. But I think there was like some basic details or implications that wasn't said. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Nothing contradictory, well, besides referring to, Daravin as her brother, but I think that was more so a mistake than anything else. Like, there is enough material here to make a narrative, and not a narrative that contradicts a whole ton of shit, but here we are.
It is fake, but there's enough details to assume what has happened, right?
There's a lot of gaps to fill in.
Yeah, there are plenty of gaps to fill in, indeed. So there is that. Do you guys got anything else to mention on part 2 or the whole book in terms of, I guess, contradictions or whatever you guys want to discuss?
Yeah, Ambria, I noticed this, but Ambria just happened to be a planet where Bane found Khalif the healer. Now he goes there, the daughter isn't there anymore because Khalif sent her away due to a possibly Bane returning. Like, what is this? Halloween H2O?
You know, I mean, I do think it's neat that, there was a follow through with the idea of Bane keeping him alive because he served a purpose. Wait, that was only established in Path of Destruction, right?
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah. But then again, Jabber Sif didn't have anything saying he would have killed him or anything like that, so...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. On the one hand, I think it's cool to follow up on that, but on the other hand, I think I much prefer the idea that Bane just never goes back there. Well, he has no need to ever go back there, but it's always an option.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the only reason...
I mean, from a story perspective, the argument can be made that him returning is more thematically appropriate.
Well,
But I do think, I don't know, I do think it would have been more interesting if he never went back. And that was just always an option on the table.
I mean, another thing about Ambria is this the second time and it won't be the last, is every single time Bane is about to die is in freaking Ambria. The first book, Bane was poisoned by Githne, almost dying, saved by Khalif. Second book, Bane's Orvalist got fried, almost got killed by the poison of Orvalist, saved by Khalif. The third book, well, he returns to Ambria for different reasons.
which we'll get to when we go to that book, so there is that. I gotta mention, there is one reason, though it's more of a world-building reason as to why Bane and Sana would be in Ambria, and it's because of the dark side power in it, the freaking lake that is filled with dark side. That probably is the one reason I think of, that it would be a good planet to train in the ways of the Force, light or dark. So that's the only reason I can think of as to why Bane would actually be there, like spending years there. That, and if they need some sort of medical assistance, I guess Khalif's there. That'll be the other reason. So, yeah, that's the only reason I can think of.
And I personally think the ending is good enough so that we don't actually need a sequel. But here's another problem. I don't know why it was, but Zana says, one day I will learn all your secrets, and then I will finally kill you, Lord Bane. Bane, you don't care about the title Lord anymore? I know Sith Lords are called Lord, but the way how he acted, the way in Path of Destruction, it seems weird.
I mean, probably him getting pissed about that is the least of his concerns by that point, so whatever.
Not to mention, he's kind of wasn't he unconscious?
No, he was awake.
He was awake.
Yeah.
Well, wait, she wasn't, saying that out loud, though. Wasn't that internally?
No. She did say that. She did say, once I learned your entire knowledge, I will kill you. Yeah. But today is not the day.
Yeah, she did say that to Bane, and Bane just smiled.
It's a shame that wasn't the whole focus of this fucking novel.
Yeah.
Like I said, we did not need this side story where the Jedi are close to finding out about Bane and the Rule of Two. It didn't serve any purpose, and any information from the Republic side of things could have easily been gathered in the point of view of Bane and Zana. And quite frankly, I think that would have done this book wonders.
Yeah, it could have been.
Plagueis is certainly what I think this book would have been. Maybe not as long, because Plagueis had to cover a lot of ground. But in terms of focusing heavily on the relationship of the Sith characters and how they impact the galaxy, what their plan really entails, just how deep this rabbit hole goes, like real conspiracy theory level shit. But no, we don't get that. And would I say this book is better than Path of Destruction? I would say yes. It does have far less problematic elements, but I don't know. I don't know if I can say one is better than the other. In terms of not being annoying as shit in regards to continuity, oh yeah, Rule of Two is better than Path of Destruction.
I would say there's more thematic contradictions, and there's like more thematic contradictions in Rule 2, and for Path of Destruction, that's more continuity contradictions.
So I think I figured it out. Path of Destruction has continuity problems that piss me off, but Rule of Two has story elements that I'm not a particular fan of. And granted, those are better than continuity problems from a strictly objective standpoint, but I really, really don't like some of the story elements in this book.
I guess in this case, Henson, it's a matter of, do you pick the poison of having all the retcons and contradictions, or do you pick the poison of just having some bad story choices?
I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, like I said, on an objective level, I would rather take the poor story decisions than the continuity problems. But in both instances, it's not fun.
I mean, I was expecting a follow-up to the Darth Bane and Xana's, ongoing adventures and Rule of Two era Sith Lords, but instead I got this weird sequel of Jedi vs. Sith. So, on the one hand,
sorta.
On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, it's good to finally put Darabit out of his misery with an annoying little shithead.
But
then again, the conclusion wasn't that satisfying, and the title of this book is another case of, I don't know what to say, it's a false advertising. Some sort of...
It kinda sorta happens.
Yeah. Sort of happens.
Because those two are separated for like most of the book, and a good chunk of it is spent with Darth Bane not being conscious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is... the title character in this book, Darth Bane, Rule of Two, and what? Two-thirds of the book is about Sana, Darabit, and Farfalla, and Balorum, but only 1/3 is about Darth Bane? Like, huh?
At least Path of Destruction had the excuse of needing to explain what was happening during the Battle of Rusan for those who didn't read Jedi Sith, or just to get some time frame as to when the events of the book were happening with the comic, aside from the fact that the comic is completely obliterated with that book. But in this book, we didn't need any of that.
Yeah, so my recommendation here is tell the 10 years before section to go screw itself and pick it and start reading for 10 years after.
Well, I guess there is that indeed. So yeah. Anything else to mention, guys?
Not really.
Okay, well, then I guess now we go into the EU connections of this book, and well, let's get the obvious ones out of the way, even though we dislike that they're in this book for these reasons, aka to retcon them. Jedi vs. Sith, Bane of the Sith, the two obvious ones. So there is that. No, this time there's no Core 1 or Darth Revan simping like in the previous one, so there could be one reference to Core 1, but as of right now I haven't really found it.
I think there was a cat hound mentioned.
Then maybe then I guess that would be the only freaking
And I think Darth Nihilus indirectly mentioned. is destroying a planet.
Dark, yeah, indirectly, it's hardly one. So, but you know what? I guess it is. As for other EU elements, so what do you guys got? Well, okay, Exarchon, yeah, we already got that one.
And let's see. The new essential chronology, because it mentions Bane finding Zana.
Well, the new essential chronology. Yeah, I would go. I would go with that since that does mean. But then again, didn't Jedi vs. Sith have Bane depicted in this finding Sana?
No, I'm seeing finding Zana.
Oh, in On the Run.
On the
Oh yeah, that. I guess it will be that. So there's that. Any other EU references you got?
I think part of the Jedi source book with Johan.
Oh yeah, definitely, because that's like the first time he's ever first mentioned. So yeah. So that much is there.
And let's see, Dark Forces, the second and third book.
Oh yeah, that definitely with those. What else?
Let's see what else. I can't really think about it.
Henson, do you got some?
No, I'm not familiar enough with the Old Republic era to really know any references.
I just Tales of the Jedi. Ambria, the Beast Riders,
Oh yeah,
Exarchon.
yeah, definitely Tales of the Jedi. So that much is there. So yeah, you got anything else, though? One?
Well, it's Path to Destruction a reference, or is that reaching?
Since this is a sequel, I would say that's reaching.
It's reaching, so it's obvious continuation. So yeah, indeed.
Well, the reference I would say, would be more along the lines of something that's not immediately tied to this book.
I would say Republic HoloNet. Remember those websites? Because that's the first thing that mentioned Rusan Reformation.
That will be that. That will be that. Though actually, the Rusan Reformation. It claims the first mention is in the essential chronology. The first one, not the new one.
Maybe. Yeah, let's do that then.
So there's that. Now it says the Phantom Menace, but it's an
No,
independent
it still does apply because Tarsus Valorum was mentioned in the HoloNet, I remember.
There is a mention of the Rusan Reformation in HoloNet. However, this one came out in 2002, at least the one that mentions the Rusan Reformation. So yeah, the essential chronology would be first, since that's 2000. HoloNet is 2002.
When did Tarsus Valorum first was mentioned or appear?
Tarsus Valorum first mentioned in. It says first appearance is here, but let's see the first mention. The first mention is a new essential guide to characters, 2002.
Yeah, then that would be it.
Okay, then there is that. So yeah, anything else you got, the one?
No.
Okay, well, what I got is, okay, so starting right off the bat, let's get to one that definitely caught my eye when I first read this, or should I say when I reread it here. The Technobists, those freaking half droids, half cyborgs.
Oh, I forgot about Belia Darzu.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely Belia Darzu. She's from. She apparently is the first mention is supposed to be the Dark Side Source book, but after a picture retcon. So if we exclude that, the earliest could be an essential guide to weapons and technology, 2004.
And I think the new essential guide to droids was the one where it mentioned her dead.
Yeah. So there's that. Now back to the Technobeast. So the Technobeast apparently supposedly tells the Jedi Companion, but they say that's a retcon single Star Wars Gamer 5. So the earliest would be Droids Technology in the Force, A Clash of Phenomena. That's 2005. So that could be the earliest of their mentions. We've not if we're not including retcons, that is. So that will be the earliest. So there is that, and of course that freaking virus that they released. It's also first mentioned in Evil Never Dies: The Sea of Dynasties of Hyperspace. So there is that too, which actually also has a Technobeast, of course. So there's that. Obviously, we got the Orbalists that were Bane of the Sith, so there's that. Though apparently, Star Wars Secrets of the Sith claims that's where the Orbalists were first mentioned. So that's interesting. So there's that. We already talked about Jehun, Nihilus, yeah. Several characters and events here in this book are obviously mentioned in later essential guides from the Jedi versus Sith, if I recall, or well, definitely I don't know about that one, but certainly the complete Star Wars Encyclopedia and the Essential Reader's Companion, the Essential Guide to Warfare, like those definitely mention several events and characters from this book. So there is that. Or mentioned Belial. So the three sisters, the three moons of Rusan. The one is from TCW, but yeah, that was first appeared in Dark Forces Rebel Agent. You already mentioned that. The one that the last two Dark Forces books pretty much are mentioned. So there is that. The Rusan Reformation. Yeah, we already mentioned that chronology. Some of the Jedi characters that appeared in basically in the duel on Titan. Yeah, so they complete Star Wars Encyclopedia and the Essential Guide to Warfare. So nothing new there. The Golden Age of the Old Republic. That first appears here. The earliest. They also are mentioned later in Darth Plagueis and Death Star, and so they're also in the official Star Wars fact files. So there's that indeed. So yeah, what other stuff? The new Sith Wars, that definitely is mentioned here. The earliest is the Essential Chronology, so there goes that. So yeah, of course, Titan, as we mentioned, the earliest source for that is Power of the Jedi source book. Its first actual appearance being Rule of Two. So we actually didn't see an appearance on this planet until here. Then of course are in SWTOR, so on and so forth. So yeah, and that seems to be it as far as all sorts of references. There's also one I found in regards to the near human sentient species called the Pingani, which they're mentioned here, but they actually first appear in Star Wars Empire at War. So there's that. And then of course we got the Umbaran Shadow Senses that first appear in Path of Destruction, but they later show up in other sources. So yeah. And of course, the Echani, first mentioned in Crimson Empire. We got an Echani Jedi here, so there's that. And yeah, that seems to be it in terms of references. So plenty of references. So yeah. Henson, your Quarter One reference, the Taranta texts, they were mentioned here. So there you go. There goes your Quarter One reference that you wanted to hear. So
yes, I definitely wanted to hear that.
So, yep. So there you go. That's pretty much it as far as I can tell. So, anything else to mention, guys, on this?
Nah.
Okay.
No.
Now we go to the conclusion. So, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Now, after more than 2 years, we finally ended what we started on with Jedi vs. Sith. But that doesn't mean there are more Bane story, not Reese. So yeah, I'm finally glad that we got to finish with dealing with that. And let's see what happens in Dynasty of Evil.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Henson?
Going into this book a second time, I was expecting to feel similar to how I felt rereading Path of Destruction. And in that case, I wasn't disappointed. What I got was a story that could have been told a million times better, in my opinion. And I'm just left wondering, I'm just left to ponder, what's worse, bad continuity or bad story elements? pick your fucking poison, and in this case, whoever wins, I've lost.
Is that ABP reference?
That is where the tagline comes from.
Well, I guess there is that. Is that it, Henson?
I guess I will say this. When I initially read this story, I was really, really hoping that, fuck, lost my train of thought. Never mind. You go.
Okay. So, as for me, well, let's just say that I did find this book more enjoyable in the sense that I was not dealing with, bullshit, bullshit contradiction retcons, at least after the first half. So that definitely and no Darth Revan worshipping, so that automatically is a plus on my end because that did get annoying in the last book. So there is that. However, yeah, I did find it odd in regards to how Bane and Sana managed to loot the Jedi at the end. So yeah, that definitely wasn't keen on, and yeah, wasted potential with certain characters, and also some that should not have even been touched. So yeah, we got some bad story writing decisions here, and definitely contradictions in the first half. If I had to pick one poison here, I guess the bad story writing would be here, because at least if this book has bad story writing, then I can easily just, I'll probably just not read it. At the very least, I can read a summary, and at least it would not affect the rest of the timeline. So that probably would have been the poison I would have chosen.
Well, it could, but at the very least, there wouldn't be continuity problems.
Yeah,
It's the lesser of two evils, but in terms of actually reading both, they both suck.
Yeah.
Bad story elements are more easily digestible from looking at things from a greater universe perspective, because it's just a blip in a larger canvas. But bad continuity just fucks that up.
I would also choose that story because I would say, the story was shit, let's move on. But if you have a story with bad continuity, and I'll say, hey, wait a second. You have a billion thoughts in your head trying to dissect what is in there and trying to make sense out of it.
Yeah.
And that's when we have rant, rage, and irrational thoughts.
Yeah. Indeed. So yeah, in regards to my final conclusion, yeah, I mean, a bit more enjoyable than the first book, but definitely was getting on the annoying side in regards to at first with the contradictions, and later on with some of the story decisions. So yeah, that definitely was not necessarily the worst, but I wouldn't say it's the best. Maybe decent at best. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I definitely am more excited for Dynasty of Evil, because Dynasty of Evil certainly would be, at least would definitely be much better than this book. So that much is there. I mean, no major contradictions there, so that's an automatic plus for me. And Darth Revan's not coming on that one, not even mentioned, so that plus too. So
yeah, I barely remember Dynasty of Evil, so rereading it again is going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So yeah, and so with that, yeah, this is the second Darth Bane trilogy book podcast. So yeah, we'll see you guys for the next one later on. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.